Well, hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Telos Saint Amour, which is a long name, so most folks call me Tay. My mandatory pronouns are they, them, there, and I'm the executive director of Youth Move National. And speaking of Youth Move National, I've got John with us today, who is not only just a board member at Youth Move National, but actually serves on our executive committee as our treasurer. John, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is John Dellick. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm a certified peer support specialist with some background in business management and administration. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with you, Tay.
Oh gosh, John, like legit, it's always a pleasure to talk to with you and to see you. Our last conversation truly, and I don't mean this in like a bad voyeuristic way or even a tokenizing way, but it was really powerful. Like I legitimately really thought about our conversation and I kept rethinking about it in the weeks that followed. And I just like took so many notes because there was so many things I wanted to talk to you about. So I'm just genuinely glad that you made the time and we were able to come together and kind of continue that conversation. So, with that being said, in our last session, we talked a lot about sort of your diagnosis and sort of what your journey was like when you were sort of starting out earlier on within the K through 12 system and as a youth. And you shared with us a lot of your emotions and the questions that you had that sort of after receiving your diagnosis of mental health illness and autoimmune deficiency. And I think we ended up talking a little bit about self-medicating and alcohol and drugs, but I don't think we actually went too deep into it. I think we really kind of focused on the mental health elements and those supposed allies in your life that maybe we hoped could have done a little bit better for you, and what was that like around the diagnosis itself. So I'm wondering if today maybe we could get into some of those elements, specifically around substance misuse, sort of your recovery journey. I don't know if that's language that resonates with you, but just kind of sharing, if as you're comfortable, what was that like? Where did you end up? How did self-medicating affect you? Maybe take us through that story of how did you discover alcohol and drugs? What was the start of that? Where did that lead to? And maybe just tell us about sort of that self-medicating journey that you've been on.
Absolutely. And I would say the self-medicating journey really started my sophomore year in high school.
Okay.
At that point in time, I had been on a plethora of different medications and SSRIs and benzos and all kind of different medications. And like I shared in our last meeting, the doctor said, "Hey, take this and it'll make you feel better." And that was basically all the information I was given. And so I'd been taking these different medications, it's trial and error for the past 4 or so years. And all that I really experienced was I felt numb and not in a good way. And I used to say I felt like a zombie. I remember waking up and immediately I would take a pill bottle's worth of medication in one morning. And some of those things were horse pills. And that was exactly how I started my day. On my way to school, medication starts kicking in, and it almost feels like I was living my life in third person. I would just kind of go through the motions. I wouldn't get fired up about anything, and I really wouldn't get too depressed or in my thoughts either. It was just, I was a shell of who I was. And I didn't like feeling that way. I myself, just in my natural state, I think I'm a pretty charismatic individual. I like to crack jokes, be goofy, not be so serious. And on those medications, I wasn't any of that. I wasn't who I truly was. And the worst thing was, I didn't like taking the medication, so I wasn't always medication compliant. And with the type of medications I was on, when I don't take them regularly, there's just added side effects that I was experiencing. Um, and so I started to become willing to look for alternative options. It wasn't something that I think I was consciously aware of that I was doing, but I was aware that, you know, this medication is not working. I'm not happy. I need to figure something else out. And it was around this point in time where I just transferred into a new group of friends. Um, some guys that I was playing sports with, and we just bonded. And one day after practice, they told me that they were going to get together and hang out and smoke some pot. And I'd always heard the stories about pot. I'd taken the Dare class, and to be honest, I at that point in time I didn't think it was a gateway drug. And be honest, today, on my honest perspective, I still do not believe that it is a gateway drug. Um, and that's all I want to say on that matter. However, so I went, hung out with them, and the first time I smoked with them, I really didn't feel anything. I didn't know if I was doing it right or doing it wrong, and it was like uneventful. Um, so I remember going home that evening and just my parents were still up, said hello, and I just immediately went to bed. And that's was my first experience smoking pot. Um, Time continued to pass, few months had gone by, and I'm in the thick of my classes in high school, and I had missed a lot of school, and I'm falling behind, trying to play catch up, and now my anxiety is through the roof. And I've also been bullied over these past few months, and now I'm feeling shame and just not feeling good about myself whatsoever. And my medications still weren't working. And it was to the point that I wasn't feeling happiness, but I was feeling sad 24/7. I didn't want to get out of bed. When I was awake, I just tried to distract myself by playing video games most of the time. It didn't require me to really think about much, and I didn't want to even think about doing the pile of homework I had to do. I remember I logged on to my Xbox one day and saw my friend was online, and we just continued talking. And I said, "Man, I'm just really not feeling too good and can't really find a solution." He said, "Dude, you should just smoke a little reefer. It always works for me." And I thought back to my first experience. I'm like, it was kind of a waste of time and money. I don't know if I want to try it again. But I said, I was open to trying again. And so I said, "Dude, do you have any? Can you help me get some?" And, we went through all of that. And by the end of that night, I had acquired a little bit of marijuana. And I remember I waited till my parents went to sleep, and I went outside and just smoked a little bit of the stuff that I had. And it was drastically different than the first time. This time I felt something, and it was just straight euphoria. I was having positive thoughts. I didn't feel like I had this huge weight on my shoulders. I went inside and watched a little TV and started laughing. And I was eventually laughing so hard that I woke my dad up. And he came downstairs and was like, "Hey, what's going on? Shouldn't you be asleep?" I said, "Yeah, Dad, sorry, I'll get to sleep right away." And it turned the volume down, and disaster averted for the time being. But what stuck to me is how I felt. I had not felt that peace, that relaxation, that, like, it just felt like all the worries in the world had been alleviated, until I came down. And, I had a bit of knowledge, and I said, that felt great. I need to be careful because that felt a little too great. And so I tried to smoke the rest of the pot I had sparingly. And I did so. And it started to become a weekend thing. And this started to become, my coping mechanism. It worked. I was able to release stress and anxiety for a little bit, was able to feel good. I didn't it didn't help me get my schoolwork done or really address any of the inner problems that I was dealing with, but it was a start. And so that became a trend for me the rest of my high school career, smoking on the weekends, and slowly but surely as time went on and now I'm about to graduate high school, I'm smoking just about every day. And I'm in a relationship at this time, and my girlfriend at the time had said, you know, I wish you would spend more time with me instead of more time going out and smoking pot. Should also acknowledge that, John, you're just not the same anymore. I can't figure out what's going on. We were also having more problems in the relationship at this time. And at this time, my mom had found out now that I'm smoking pot. So, and she is a sleuth, a total detective. And it's hard to evade her once she is on your case, let me tell you. So now I'm starting to experience some adverse consequences from smoking pot, but nothing that was big enough that made me want to quit. From my perspective, this was the only thing that was giving me a little peace of mind, and I was not willing to let that go by any means. Some time had gone by, and I had enrolled in college, and I'm starting my fall semester as a student for my first year in college, and was really excited because just like we had talked in the first video, when I thought high school was going to be a new beginning, I thought college was going to be a new beginning. Yeah, high school was difficult. I made it through, and here's a new fresh start. Unfortunately, you know, I had not been taking the time to do that inner work, like I have said, and my mental health was still deteriorating, piece by piece, day by day, to the point where I remember my mom showing up to pick me up from college one day, and instead of showing up to take me home, she said, John, I don't want to do this, but, we have to kick you out. If you're going to live under our roof, you can't smoke pot. And clearly, you can't smoke, you can't stop. And so I just have to show you tough love, and you're going to have to figure something out. I went berserk. It was a very much a crisis situation because I didn't know what the heck I was going to do at that time. And to the point where someone had overheard my mother and my conversation and called the police. The police show up, and the officer said, hey, what's going on here, and inquired. And, my mom explained the situation. I explained the situation. There wasn't anything of threat. My mom didn't feel threatened. But I said, I did acknowledge I was struggling with my mental illness and needed some help. And so they hauled me off to the mental hospital, where I was eventually pink slipped. And I did not want to be pink slipped. I didn't want to go to the mental hospital, but they took me anyway because that was all they knew how to do when it came to a mental health thing. And I remember being in the mental hospital and telling the doctors, like, listen, I have an exam on Monday. This was Friday at the time. Like, I've got schoolwork to do. I understand you're trying to help, but I've got a lot of other stresses, and this is just compounding everything. And they eventually were able to get me out. My mom and I had come to an agreement where I would start going to therapy for my substance use. And I could stay at home and continue to work on school, and as long as I stayed, compliant with that agreement. Came home, continued working on my schoolwork, and life just continued to get overwhelming until I had another mental health crisis on campus at college. This time the police were involved again. It involved several different parties, and some people felt like they were threatened at the time. And I ended up getting hauled off to county jail instead of a mental hospital this time. County jail was just an overwhelming process because I was 19 years old at this time, And when I'm in booking, I'm in there with a bunch of grown ass men. And that was intimidating. I'd always heard stories of jail and what it's like, and now I'm getting thrown into it as this young kid, and it was scary. Thankfully, I was able to just kind of navigate my way through that. And I remember walking, I finally made it through booking, and it was like an 8 hour process. Um, and I didn't get arrested till like 6 p.m. in the evening. So it wasn't until late in the morning, early in the morning, actually, when I'm finally getting to a cell. And I remember getting in there and was there for about a week or so, was able to get bail and came home. And now I'm fighting this court case. And I'm also consequently kicked out of school for this event. So my life is really starting to deteriorate at a much more rapid pace. A couple weeks go by, I get arrested again, literally back into the same cell the second time in jail. And I'll never forget, as I'm coming back into the unit, there was one guy that was in the cell next to me, said, "Oh, back again so soon." And I just couldn't help, but I didn't even have any words to say at that point, and just walked back in the cell with my head down and, didn't know what to expect. Once again, I have to sit it down for a little while. One of the conditions, I eventually got bond, and one of the conditions was to be placed on house arrest. So I get to go home, I'm on house arrest, and now I'm looking at some really a pretty intense legal battle. And I'm also realizing like I need some real help. And so my mom, dad, and I sat down, we started looking at more intensive solutions. I started going to an IOP. My house arrest and probation officer allowed me to leave the house to attend this intensive outpatient group. And this was 3 days a week. And this was one of the best decisions I made during this time, was to start attending this group. I was one of my first experiences with peers that have similar lived experience as myself. Um, Growing up and in high school, there was nobody I was ever able to relate to about my mental health battles, and it was very much an isolating experience. Attending this group, I'm able to share stories of my experience, and instead of people looking at me crazy, some people are kind of laughing because they get it. And so I started to have this community, and it came at a much needed time because I was very alone um, during this legal process. I remember people that I thought were my friends in high school were sharing the news article all on Facebook, um, and it was very much a hurtful process to go through, and very, very isolating, like I said. At this time, I'm also working with therapists, seeing a psychiatrist for my medication, and it was really effective because it was all in-house. And this was my first experience going to a provider that really provided those wraparound services. Prior to that, I was always bouncing around. It seemed like my therapist was never on the same page as my psychiatrist. I was getting these different diagnoses. And so having everything all at the same place was really, really beneficial to my recovery journey. I loved the IOP so much that I started going 5 days a week. They made the accommodation that I was able to do that. This really helped me battle the isolation during this time as well. And it was just a real beautiful journey for me. By the time I was graduating the program, they had provided me the opportunity to facilitate some groups here and there. So I very much think this was a higher powers plan um, to start getting me involved in this recovery journey and facilitating groups and meetings, because I do have the honor of doing that a lot today. Um, this legal battle eventually went on. It was 2.5 years. Um, I was able to get off house arrest and regain some freedoms during that time. And I started continuing with my therapist. We were going twice a week. And I really just worked hard on my mental health. And I started to see some benefits, like my parents were starting to trust me again, and hope was starting to emerge. At the conclusion of all those legal battles, I did get some criminal charges. One was a felony, and it was heartbreaking. Not from the sense that I was charged with it, but from the sense that I was I grew up believing that, once you get a felony, your life is pretty much over because you'll never be able to get a job. And here I am at 20 years old, and I feel like my life is absolutely over, due to this charge. I have expressed, my relationship with my mom. I'm very close with her, and I shared this with her. And she said, we got to get you in school or doing something. And I've always wanted to be, a good student. I've always had college aspirations. So I applied to a couple of different colleges and some community colleges. All but one rejected me, um, just due to the criminal record and being on probation and all the stuff that had happened up until this point in time. But the one that accepted me, I was excited and began my classes and started working on an associate's degree in business management. Began working and was, excited to go on this educational journey. And once again, I started experiencing my health concerns from my IgA deficiency and was missing a lot of classes. And this was a very triggering event. And I was able to finish the semester, but my mental health just really started to decline. And I didn't want to talk about it with anybody. I was really just starting to lose hope. It was like that one punch to the jaw that really just knocks you down to the ground. And I started hanging out with my old friends again, started self-medicating once again. And really, as I dove back into that world that I was trying to escape from, I went much deeper into it and it got much darker as I dove back in. This point, really starting to feel the effects and the weight of everything. My mom is back on my case. My dad is on my case. We're not having the harmony in the relationship that we used to have. And I'm wondering, why can't I figure this out? Why can't I get this together? It's not like I'm not trying and I don't know what to do. And this led to me wanting to commit suicide. And I took the steps, acquired a handgun and found a place where I was going to do it and had it all thought out. And by the grace of God, he gave me the strength and saw me through. He literally has had his hand on me my entire life. And at this point in time, God put both his hands on me and literally saved me from that situation. He yanked me out of it. And just, I remember it was right around Christmas of 2015. And my sister's birthday is December 30th. And I had just thought, if I do this now, it was a couple of days before my sister's birthday. She's always going to think about this when her birthday comes around. And I don't want to do that. And I was just like the battle. I had the angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other. And the two major thoughts that were going through my head is one, if I end this now, I'm not going to have to feel this way any longer and all this pain finally stop. But the second thought that was going through my head was if I end this all now, I give up all chance of things ever getting any better. And what if I'm, just this close from things getting better? And so, God guided me through that situation. I put the gun down. But a few days after that, the gun was found. My probation officer was notified about this, and I'm back in county jail again. And now I'm looking at a pretty serious penalty, being on probation, having a felony. Um, and this isn't something that, they were taking lightly. And I pretty much thought my life was going to be over at this point. I remember they took me in the jail, they put me in the turtle suit, and humiliating, embarrassing, and I was just full of shame. And I just spent a lot of time in the jail cell, reflecting and, talking to a God of my understanding and who I have a relationship with today. And one of the days I remember one of the CEOs said, "John, you've got some mail here." And I thought, who the heck would be writing to me? Or it could just be some legal documentation from the courts. I open up this letter from this individual. It's a man that I had never met before in my life. He starts the letter by saying he's read about me in the papers and my experiences. And then he went on to share some of his own lived experiences. He grew up in the south side of Youngstown, and growing up just got caught up with the wrong group of people, and eventually, just started ripping and running in the streets. He got into some bad activities and eventually left him with several bullet wounds lying in one of the streets on the south side of Youngstown, pretty much left for dead. And as he said he was lying there on the ground, he looked over and saw one of these churches, and it's called Calvary Church in Youngstown, Ohio. A church that I'm actually pretty familiar with, just due to being in the area and having attended a couple times throughout my lifetime. And he said, as I was laying there on the ground, I just felt these hands come on me, and I said, "God, if you can do something to save me, I'll really change my ways." And he took, eventually, like an ambulance came, saved him, and now he was in a position giving back to other people in the community, sharing his experience. And he said, "John, you may feel like all hope is lost and that, you're right where I was, not literally, but metaphorically, dying in the middle of the street. I encourage you to not give up. God has a plan for your life. Please do not give up. Turn to him and he will guide you." And I remember reading that and I wasn't a real religious, spiritual person at that time. I was brought up in the church and drew my own conclusions at an early age about it due to different things in my own experiences. This guy, no one paid him to do this. He wasn't affiliated with any churches, and it felt real as can be. And I remember reading that, and it just kind of lit a little fire in me, and I said, I'm not going to give up just yet. Went through my court proceedings, and again, once God had acted in my life to the point where the judge and prosecutor understood that this was a serious mental illness challenge. I wasn't going to use the gun for harm of any other person. And so I was just court ordered to now be medication compliant, make sure I'm getting to therapy. And I had to rejoin that intensive outpatient group that I had previously graduated from. I did all of that willingly and without any complaint. A friend of mine had also reached out to me once I was out of jail and said, "Hey, I go to this support group. I think you'll really benefit from it. Why don't you come with me and just check it out?" I was willing. I came and checked it out. And this was really my first introduction to peer support in an informal way. They told me, come to these meetings and find someone that you really get along with that has been around for a while that can guide you on your journey. And so I started, looking around, and I remember the first meeting I went to, an individual that I had known pretty much my whole life came up and greeted me with a hug and just happiness. And he was happy to see me, and that was like a new feeling for me because not many people were happy to see me at this point in time. He said, "John, it's great to see you. I'm glad you're here." And he sat down and talked with me, and he said, "You know, I know you've known me for a long time, but there's a lot of my life that you don't know about. And he shared what his life was like, what had happened, and what it was like today. And I never knew about how his life used to be. And looking at him, I would have never believed it. Um, but he was a credible individual, and I didn't think he was just fabricating some story. And the experiences that he shared with me, down to the point where he was ready to commit suicide with a handgun as well, completely shattered all the walls that I had ever built up. I was ready and willing to, you know, start to share some of those thoughts and emotions that I'd always repressed and never felt comfortable sharing. I felt comfortable sharing it with this individual. I left that meeting and I remember going home to my parents' house and my mom asked me how it went. And I was like, this was a great time. I met a lot of great people and I felt love as soon as I walked in through the doors. She said, will you be going back? I said, yeah, I plan on going to another one here. Um, and I said that, but I never really meant it at that time. And I really had a great time and all of that, but I never had the intention of following through on going to another meeting because I just felt like it really wasn't truly for me. So that led me to, dealing with it my own ways. And again, the pressures of the world got to me and I started self-medicating again. And, with all the attention on me already being on probation and this recent parole violation, it wasn't shortly after that, a random drug test came about and came back dirty. And now I'm back in county jail again. And this time, everyone's just about had it up to here with me. We've given him chances. He keeps spitting in our faces. Now it's time to throw the book at him, essentially, is where I was at. And I remember this time my mom came and my parents always came to visit me in county jail. But this was the last time they ever came to visit me. And seeing my mom crying through that glass and knowing I'm the cause of that, it just broke me. And I didn't want to continue living this life. This wasn't the life I had asked for. And now it just felt like it was truly about to be all over and I was just going to be in jail. I had about 37 years over my head at this time. And so it wasn't some small thing. And by the grace of God, God never gave up on me. My parents never gave up on me. And some people came to meet me while I was in jail and they said, we're going to try to get you into a rehab. And they shared their lived experience with me. One of them was a doctor. The other was literally the executive director of this rehab. And they said, we've had our own battles, with addiction. We've been in your shoes. And they showed me pictures and where they were. And they said, we've been to rehab and started working on ourselves and taking suggestions and working with a mentor. And this is where we're at today. And we want this for you. We don't know if we'll be able to get you in and if the judge will grant it, but just know that we're trying and fighting this for you. I was able to get into that rehab. And at first I went kicking and screaming, to be quite honest. I remember being on the phone every night telling my mom, you got to get me out of here. I can't take it. We need to figure something else out. And she said, John, this is the only thing you can do right now. You got to toughen up, you got to suck it up, and you got to make the best of it. And so that's what I started to do. I started to take the group seriously. I remember meeting with my therapist for one of the first times as we're doing my planning and treatment. And he said, John, you don't see it right now, but you're a leader. People listen, when you talk. and you've got a good heart and you're a good kid, and it's too soon for you to give up. You just need a new way to go about living your life. I can help you, and everyone else here can help you with that, but it's all going to be contingent upon you actually doing the work. Are you willing to do the work? And at this point in time, I had the willingness beaten into me through all these prior experiences. And I was genuinely willing to do whatever it took to change my life for the better. I went through rehab. I was there. Um, the extended amount of time was like 28 days, and I ended up doing 60 days at this facility. And I didn't want to do it at the time. I kind of fought it, but looking back on it, it was the best thing for me. I had to go back to court shortly after I finished my rehab, where they evaluated my progress and would make a decision on sentencing. I was doing well, and so the judge forewent sentencing me to any prison time contingent upon me staying on my recovery journey. And to ensure that I stayed on that journey, I was court ordered to go to a sober living house upon release and to attend recovery meetings and maintain my compliance with, my therapy. I had to do an IOP for this as well. And so there were other contingencies as well that I had to maintain. All of which at this point in time, I had this like new pair of glasses, this brand new attitude where, thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to make the absolute best of it. And that's what I did. I hit the ground running. I started working with a mentor who really just provided me individual peer support services, started going to peer groups, support groups, and started taking suggestions and really engaging in my therapy, engaging in my IOP, and I started to just feel better each and every day. And it was an experience I never thought was possible. And as I'm making this progress, I see the relationship with my mom and dad. They're starting to trust me again. I'm 90 days out of the rehab facility at this point. My mom and dad actually gave me a house key and said that I'm welcome to actually come home whenever I want, as long as I'm compliant with the sober living house rules. And so I started to really see the fruits. I have genuine friends today, people that I can count on. If I needed someone to talk to, I was able to call them up. They would answer the phone, drop whatever they were doing, and hold space for me to share. I didn't have that before. And I didn't have friends that I felt comfortable sharing that stuff with. But this was all starting to change. About another month out, I go to report to my probation officer. And it's just, routine monthly check-in, see how everything's going. I remember walking into my PO's office, and it was him, and there were 4 other guys with bulletproof vests on. They got guns on each side of their waist. And, some of them, you see the handcuffs hanging out of their back pocket. And as soon as I walk in there, one of the head guys comes up and says, "Are you John Dellick?" I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And I actually stuck my hand out to shake his hand. And he said, "I'm Special Agent so-and-so from the ATF. I have a secret indictment here with your name on it, and you're coming with us." And right then and there, they put me in handcuffs, haul me out of the building, and I'm now taken to the federal courthouse in downtown Youngstown, where I'm getting booked and having my first arraignment hearing. And go through the hearing, the prosecutor and the magistrate say I need to remain in the custody of the federal government. So then they take me to a federal holding facility. And by the end of that day, I'm sitting in the federal holding facility with my cellie who doesn't speak a lick of English. And I'm just wondering what the heck happened. No idea. Come to find out, all of this whole situation arose from the handgun that I was going to commit suicide with, 8 months ago, back in the beginning of 2016. And I'm just like, why is all of this happening now? Is the one thought that's going through my head. It's like, I'm actually doing things that are working for me. You can see the progress. People are telling me they see the progress. And now it's like everything is crashing down once more. And I remember talking to some guys on the unit, and they said, yeah, the feds have the highest conviction rate. A lot of people don't ever get out. And then the other guy that I'm sitting with talking, he said, I've been fighting this case for 5 years. I haven't even been sentenced yet. So he's been in the federal holding facility for 5 years. He hasn't even started or even been given a sentence. And I'm just like, looking at these guys, I'm like, this is literally about to become my life. And then the third guy speaks up. He said, yeah, you guys have been here for a while, and I've been here for a little bit too. But all I know is one thing, and that one thing is tough times don't last, tough people do. And I remember him saying that clear as day to this day, because talk about when you need a word, you need a message, you need some encouragement. That man came in with the right thing at the right time, and he didn't even realize it. Because here I'm looking at my life's about to be over, but once again, a little shred of hope is given to me, and I'm hanging on to that for dear life. I'm in the federal holding facility for several days, and then I finally found out I've got a court date. So they haul me up to Cleveland, Ohio the next day, where the Circuit District Court is. And I'm in there waiting to get processed. And I remember they finally call me, take me up the elevator and all the chains. And I remember walking into the courtroom in my jumpsuit and the chains on my wrists and on my ankles. And I remember looking over to like where all the seats are. And, there's my mom, there's my dad. They've always been there to support me in these court proceedings. But there are some of my friends from the support groups that I've been going to. There's some of my peers, my mentors there as well. They're all there. They drove up to support me. And I'd never had that kind of support before, ever. And that was, again, a little bit of encouragement. Like, this isn't it. Don't give up, And my friends were there. Although I didn't get released that day and I had to stay in the federal holding facility a little while longer, I was able to finally get released on bond, which is a miracle in itself. And they put me on house arrest. Once again, this is my third time on house arrest in my life. And I'm on house arrest at the sober living house still. So it was quite an experience, but I was with a good group that supported me. And as I got released and I'm fighting this case, I'm still going to my recovery meetings. The big thing that changed early on at this time is I didn't fold. I didn't give up and go back to self-medicating. I didn't go back and hang out with the same people, places, and things that I used to. I was sticking to the plan. And I had the support that when I wanted to start wiggling around and deviating, I had people that held me accountable and got me back in line. And I fought that case. I was able to get a job, while I'm fighting this case, a job that completely changed my life. Because that was not an easy process, especially fighting a Fed case. 99% of the jobs I applied to rejected me, and a lot of them didn't call me back. And I had to have a job for probation requirements. And so I'm in this sticky place. But I was able to get employment and I'm fighting the case. And the sentencing finally comes around the next year in February. And I walked in and, I thought, things would just continue to improve. I have employment. I'm doing well in the community. I'm being a contributing member. I'm staying out of trouble. I have a lot of people that will vouch for me. Things are going to have to work out. Well, they did and they didn't. I was sentenced to federal prison. Uh, the blessing in disguise was that the judge worked outside of the mandatory guidelines. I was supposed to be there for at least 3 to 4 years, and I ended up doing a little less than a year in actual custody. Um, but it was really an interesting journey for me. And I think I'd like to just stop there. If that sounds good to you.
That sounds awesome. Before I let you go, and I also want to be mindful of your time, is there anything you need from me or in this moment to kind of process and breathe and move forward with your day? I mean, that's a lot to share. I mean, it's your story, and I'm not telling you how you should feel, but that's a lot. You doing okay?
I am doing okay.
Okay. All right.
Th- this for me, sharing this has really just been helpful, in my own growth.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of like the emotions that I used to feel when thinking about this and talking about these subjects, um, I've healed from, thanks to therapy, and especially EMDR was a huge catalyst for me with all of that.
Me too.
Where it was intense, but
It
it
is.
was it was worth the investment. Um, and the emotion that just comes up now is just it's not bad emotion. You
Yeah.
know,
Okay.
I just really take time because it's those little things along the way that have such a profound impact. And I don't think about them on a daily basis, but when they do come up, I'm forever grateful for that guy that sent me that letter.
Yeah.
I've never been able to talk to him since. Some of the people that came to support me in court are dead. And, I just think about all that, and it's been one hell of a ride, and those are motivating factors for why I do the work that I do today.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're still riding it. I'm like legitimately so happy you're around, John. You do so much good for so many people, including me directly. So I just like really, really appreciate you.
Thank you, Tay. I'm appreciate you, and I'm really glad that we are able to have this time together. I really enjoy sharing all of this with you.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
really do.
I'm glad. I enjoy listening. So yeah, I appreciate you. Okay. What really fast? Tough times change. Tough. What's the phrase again?
Tough times don't last, tough people do.
People do. Oh, so good. Oh my gosh. Tough times don't last. Tough people do. All right. I'm taking that's my little thing for today. Keeping that right there. Oh, all right. I appreciate you. If you need me, I'm around and we'll schedule our next round soon.
Sounds great, Tay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.